Hello and welcome back to 7 Days to Die. We're still in the hotel, having cleared the first floor, and apparently there's snow here, and it's coming through and filling this area with snow. And picking up where I left off last episode, talking about zombie movies. Let's see. Another terrible one off the top of my head. I mean, they're terrible, but I still enjoy them, would be the Resident Evil movies. Forgot about these. Like, Paul W.S. Anderson just kind of sees stuff, it feels like. I feel like he watches someone play the games, sees a monster or something, is just like, yeah, I want that. Just somewhere in the movie. Because I really can't imagine Capcom just being like, yeah, just put Nemesis somewhere. You know, put the Executioner Manginis in there, just shove them somewhere, we don't really care. Because it feels like bad product placement, if anything. So I feel like it's just kind of him seeing stuff he likes and just like, ooh, put that in. The movies are still decent. They're not, you know, unwatchable schmuck, or schlock, because they're still pretty fun to watch. Yeah, I've watched them so many times I can nitpick every scene, but that's just because I'm unnecessarily pedantic about things, and I get that, and I embrace it. I know, like I said before, it sucks being like, oh, I just sit here and tear down movies, like, in games and stuff, but given the opportunity, I'd love to make a horror movie. I just find it extremely difficult to not make something that is really close to, if not already copying something that exists. Especially because I'd love to make a slasher movie. But slashers, if you have a character use a machete or have a hockey mask on, it's a Jason clone. I mean, it's kind of hard to not. Like, if you wanted to do, like, finger knives, you're blatantly ripping off Freddy, so you can easily write that one off, but Michael Myers kind of hijacked the whole using a knife trick, same as Ghostface, but at least with, like, Scream, their whole thing was parodying horror to a degree that it was still a horror movie, but it's essentially featuring characters who are effectively normal people, you know, the people who've seen all the horror movies and know, you know, oh, this is the trope, this is gonna happen here, this is when the bad guy gets up one final time to provide a final scare, you know. That. And I feel like if you went that route with movies, it also becomes, oh, you're just riffing off of, you know, Scream. So it's a very weird place right now. I also noticed horror, it's not as gory as it used to be. Like, when you look at it right now, we don't have a ton of gore in our horror movies. It's more like Human Centipede and Saw levels where it's just gratuitous violence without the blood, which is very peculiar to me. Because I feel like the more extreme... Well, I get it, to get the ratings board off your back, you can't exactly do extreme violence and extreme gore. You kind of have to pick and choose. Just kind of perplexes me. Back to the movies. Another good one. Well, I mean, they're not good. I still like the first one. Was Return of the Living Dead. The first movie was fantastic. It looks kind of crappy now, but it was good. I can say that with 100% certainty. It's not on the level of, like, The Thing. Like, The Thing... I sound like I'm blowing this out of proportion, but I would say that The Thing by John Carpenter is a cinematic masterpiece. It builds tension perfectly, the characters are believable and interesting, the monster is friggin' horrifying, the special effects, like, it's all practical, from what I know. And it's damn good. Like, if I were to get into movie, like, directing, I would want to make a movie and have a scene like when the doctor gets his arms bit off because the one guy's chest cavity opens up and becomes a mouth, and then his head falls off and scuttles away. Like, I want to have a scene as iconic as that. Once again, back to Return of the Living Dead. Really good movie. The ending is kind of bland, but in general, I thought it was a really good movie. The sequels progressively get worse to the point where the fifth movie, they couldn't... I think they were trying to sell, like, the rights to it or the soundtrack, and they literally couldn't sell it. Like, it was on eBay and no one wanted it. Because it starts off with Return of the Living Dead, Return of the Living Dead 2, which takes place in this little town where one of the zombie canisters, where it's a zombie and a bunch of trioxin, 13 I think it is, one of those canisters falls off an army truck, rolls into a sewer, and some kids find it. It ends up breaking open. The gas goes into a mausoleum and a graveyard. All the zombies pop up, start eating everyone. How they fight the zombies was kind of lame, but it was a decent movie. Once again, I think that was in the 80s, so if it's from the 80s, then it definitely fits. If it's from early 90s, I can still see it. And it's definitely not from later, because the actual quality of the film and stuff, you can tell. It's not a newer movie. But that was not bad. The third one... God, I think the third one was Necropolis? No. The third one was a completely isolated movie, and it was like an attempt at a horror love story. Like, imagine the movie Warm Bodies, that zombie romance movie, because for some reason that needed to exist. Imagine that, but like way more violent, but also worse in pretty much every aspect. And that's what you got. It was... I don't even know, man. I think it's the result of trying to keep it's not even like a flowing continuity, because to a degree it is, but it's also crap, because if I remember right, they make it seem like zombie outbreaks are kind of a commonplace or a thing that happens. And I don't know. I hate when movies try to do that, where it's like, oh, you know, it's just your monthly zombie outbreak, you know, you get tornadoes, hurricanes, and zombies. It's like, no. This needs to be an apocalyptic thing, not just, you know, oh damn, the highway's closed due to zombies this week. Sorry, boss, I can't go to work. The neighboring town has been overrun by the living dead. No, it's horrible. So you have the third movie, which was crap. Then they go into the fourth movie, which was Necropolis, which... I gotta drop this stuff off. It manages to do something I didn't think was possible and make a worse movie. Because the fourth movie, Necropolis, this kid's parents die. Like, it's already flat out said, like, oh yeah, his parents are dead. He's living with his uncle. His uncle works at some laboratory. His uncle's a douche. It's like, okay, you know, whatever. And the kid, one of his friends is like skateboarding or something, hits his head and goes into like a coma. They go to visit him, and he got taken out of the hospital, and it turns out by the company that his uncle works for. Because they then go there and find him, and it turns out they're taking people and turning them into zombies for experiments. Why? It's not really explained, just, hey, let's make zombies. Because, you know, every zombie movie exists in a vacuum where no zombie movies have ever been created. Which, I know I'm getting needlessly picky over it, but it's just bad writing. Okay, where did I finish off? Cleared here, yep. Yep. Okay, did I go... Guess I'd be going this way. We'll just go through every door and find out. When I talk about random topics, I get distracted. But so, that happens, they find, or they're going through, and it turns out the kid finds a lab where his parents' bodies are stored because when they died, they were then taken by the company and turned into zombies. But not just any zombies. These are like Dollar Tree version of Nemesis. I'm talking store brand versions. They got like a minigun on an arm and armor plating that makes them look like a scuffed version of the Borg. And during all of this, they end up getting activated and mow down a bunch of zombies and then get run over and die. And the kid's all mad. His uncle like jacks a canister and runs with it and like flees, and he ends up selling it, I think, yeah, because he jacks it, then the movie ends, and then the last movie, which is the worst of them all, Return of the Living Dead 5, Rave to the Grave. You can already just... Oh, God. I feel physical pain even mentioning that movie's name. It's so terrible. Because it follows the characters from Necropolis. Now they're in college. The uncle is still alive. He sold the canister of trioxin with the zombie in it to... I don't even know who they sell it to. I didn't even fully understand that. But they're in Chernobyl, because of course they're in Chernobyl. That's where everybody sells illegal zombifying bioweapons, is Chernobyl. Disregard, Ukraine still has an actual government and military and actually monitors, the whole Chernobyl exclusion zone, but, whatever. So, they wheel deal have that. Somehow, the kid, who's now in college, and his numbnuts friends get their hands on the canister of trioxin. And you know what they do? Just, can you imagine this? What they do is, instead of being like, hey, this is a dangerous weapon and we should do something about it, one of the guys is like, hey, I'm gonna make drugs out of this. And proceeds to make what is the equivalent of, like, MDMA. He's making drugs out of zombie juice. And people take it and they're raving and stuff. And they're, I don't know, tripping, rolling, whatever it would be. Whatever the appropriate term would be. But they're on it. And they're like, oh yeah, if you take too much, you can overdose and become a zombie. And you can guess what happens. They have a big Halloween rave and a bunch of people OD and become zombies. they finally, like, just before everybody ends up having that happen, they're like, okay, we gotta not do this anymore after one of their friends gets eaten, and one of the guys had kept a bunch of it and made a bunch, and then had sold it at the rave. And it ends, God, I can't remember if it's an airstrike or they just light the place up with machine gun fire. But they deal with all the zombies, and it just ends. And it's so terrible. There's no redeeming quality for this movie. I can't be like, oh, you know, the writing's good, because the writing sucked. Can't say the acting was good, the acting was bad. There's nothing good about it. It's just disappointing. Okay, I can't drop down that. I just kind of realized that existed, and I was like, am I skinny enough to just slide down here? But yeah, it's weird watching a decent movie become a progressively worse franchise to the point that no one wants it. I mean, there's a lot of bad zombie movies. God, what is it? Zombie Diaries? Yeah, that's one. That one's a terrible movie. One guy just, like, they play him up to be this, like, psycho killer, and he's supposed to be the villain at the end, and he becomes the villain, but the writing is so just disjointed and bad that he just, like, kills everyone at the end. You're like, okay, but why though? Or like I had said before with, like, the Resident Evil movies, I said that, I think, last episode, the Resident Evil movies aren't bad. That said, they're not great. They got worse over time. Like Resident Evil 1, not a bad movie. Stuck decently to all the existing movies or games and stuff. You know, it's their own little Resident Evil cinematic universe kind of crap. Whatever. Resident Evil 2 Apocalypse. Honestly, my favorite. I enjoyed it. Thought it was good. I actually enjoyed Nemesis. Character LJ, thought he was funny. Three? Oh, that was Extinction? That's when it got really dumb. Just like, oh yeah, the zombies came and just killed nature. I'm like, why? How did zombies suddenly become like Turbo Agent Orange? That's not how zombies work. Then Dr. Isaac's becoming a tyrant. Part of me was like, oh cool, the tyrant. But at the same time, I'm like, this is dumb. Especially because me being me, the lore for a tyrant was that you had to have certain genetic traits. You couldn't just take anyone. Because when they did just... I hear a zombie. I'll deal with it later. But if you take just anyone and do the treatment to turn them into a tyrant, they instead become like a Bandersnatch, which shows up in Code Veronica? Yeah, I think they show up in Code Veronica. And what it is essentially like this really wonky zombie with one massive arm and then one horribly, I don't know, he effectively doesn't have an arm. Like, he's got one big one and one missing arm. And they would, like, reach out and slap you or grab you and do stuff like that. And actually having a proper tyrant was through having certain builds. That's why they ended up having one guy, I cannot remember his name, he was a Russian guy, based on the lore, who they had on the board, because then they could just clone him and turn him into tyrants. That's why they all look alike. At least, like, if he had turned into the proto-tyrant, where he had his heart exposed and all the necrotic tissue and the giant spike on one hand, and like the super twitchy movement, that would be good. That would actually be terrifying. Because there's just something about a creature just like standing there and just twitching and like convulsing and then moving super fast. It's just unnerving. And I think it would have done a really good job, like, ramping up horror, instead of just being like, oh, he's a tyrant, but he also isn't, because he's got super, like, well, he's like Nemesis, because Nemesis had tentacles that he could actually control, and that's what Isaac's has. Or, well, you find out a clone of Isaac's. And that's what made it worse, too, is as those movies went on, they started getting really deep, and like, everything's a clone. It's like, just stop. I get it, you wrote yourself into a corner. But seriously, the clone shtick ran out and stopped becoming an interesting trope. I don't know, hell, the 80s maybe? Everything being a clone isn't fun or quirky, it just undoes everything. Seriously, from a writing perspective, it renders anything invalid. Oh, I killed this villain. Turns out he's a clone. You didn't do anything. It's like, oh, okay. Realistically, what's stopping whoever cloned him from making 50 more and just sending a horde after me? And that's the problem with clones in movies. Now I'm starting to struggle for bad zombie movies, because I could go directly to, like, Asylum movies. Or, you know, like, one thing I love to do is buy those big horror movie packs you find at, like, Walmart, where it's like, hey, you can get 10 or 20 horror movies for $5. I love those, because a lot of them are absolute crap. I mean, they are just bottom of the barrel college student productions. Some of them are halfway decent. I do not want to pick up that poop. Also, I've managed to find 2 toilet pistols in here. That is really good. Bunch of random stuff. I'm gonna have to unload all this, honestly. I am fully tapped out. I also need to eat. I'll go downstairs, kill the zombies, take something out of the box. I'm gonna need a second drop. Do I need a second drop-off box? I'm thinking out loud here, and I don't think I do, because realistically... Oh, that's the poop. Realistically, I don't... I can just knock my... Enough of this crap should stack. Realistically, enough should stack. I'm on the top floor, first one done. Okay. That's easy to remember. Just thinking, like, I feel like zombie movies, one of their big issues is the fact that they're movies. When a zombie apocalypse fits far better... Really? All of you? Okay. It fits far better as a show, but you need to have an evolving threat, because The Walking Dead got real boring after a while. It went from like, oh, we gotta survive, and it's like, oh, cool, zombies, people, action, a little bit of interpersonal drama, to I feel like the show is 90% interpersonal drama and 10% zombies. It's days of our lives in the apocalypse. That's all it is. That's what kind of kills me, is it's not even good writing at this point. There's always some arbitrary thing that drives everyone away. Huh. Okay, so there's still... Realistically, I should be able to clear out the rest of this. It's gonna be close. I can guarantee I'm gonna be riding the line of storage here. But it should be doable. I shouldn't have grabbed that. I would love to grab that airdrop, but there's no way I'm able to do that right now. Where is it? Is it back? Okay, so it's back towards where I came. Because I believe these these go away a certain distance from them. I'm just gonna mark it. But yeah, with like I had said last episode that Netflix is getting the rights to, or well, now has the rights to make a Romero zombie movie, Army of the Dead. I feel like they could realistically make a movie, or not a movie, but a show set in the apocalypse. Because, I mean, look at The Witcher. The Witcher is phenomenal. If they can do that, I think they can write a decent zombie show. I'd even take a Resident Evil show. That'd be interesting. I mean, there's a lot of directions they could go, considering we got like 20-some years of Resident Evil stuff. Always found it a bit annoying how quickly they just kind of like... Resident Evil blitzed through viruses. Like, oh, it's the T-virus. Next game, oh, it's the G-virus. Oh, it's the TG virus, it's the progenitor virus, it's Ouroboros, it's the Las Plagas. Now it's T-Phobos, it's T-Abyss, T-Veronica. It's like... Why do you have to keep like, T-Abyss, I understand. That one was actually really interesting. Because it's like, hey, it's essentially adapting for, or being adapted for aquatic life. I'm like, okay, I can roll with that. TG, okay, I can understand that one to a degree. C-Virus? Nah, thought it was dumb. Some of the creatures it made were cool. The whole, like, creating a gas was interesting, but the fact that it was, like, you get exposed and you apparently instantly become a zombie was... felt like very poor design. I get from a bioweapon standpoint, that would be how you'd want this weapon to work. Like, you don't want people to be infected and have, you know, 8 to 12 hours before turning. You want them to, boom, flip a switch and go. But just feels weird. Oh, one zombie movie I remember now was Pontypool. A very peculiar one, for sure. Because it was people turned into zombies because of a word. Which is a very weird way of putting it. Like, by speaking like English, they would become a zombie. but it had to be like a certain word or something. I haven't watched it in a while, but it was definitely an interesting take on zombies, and it wasn't a bad movie, because it takes place pretty much entirely from a radio host, like his booth, just listening to what's going on and trying to help in any way he can. And it was kind of wild, for sure. Or, there's I Sell the Dead, which isn't a bad movie. It had Ron Perlman and... God, something Monaghan. One of the guys who was in Lord of the Rings. I think he was Pippin? Or Merry, one of the two hobbits. But he's in it too. It was a comedy, and I found it pretty good. It was actually in one of those big bundles of horror movies, and I was like, really? You got two well-known actors, and it's still kind of like a bottom-of-the-barrel movie? That's surprising. Especially considering some of the other movies in that pack were terrible. There was one... I remember watching it once. I cannot tell you a single thing about it. I don't remember anything. It feels like a fever dream because it was just terrible. I think I actually fell asleep during it. Which I don't fall asleep during movies, and I just could not pay attention or keep my eyes open. It felt like someone trying to cover up the fact they had a low budget, because they sat there and had everything super dark, and just the lighting was so terrible. I couldn't tell, like I said, I can't tell you anything about it. Man, zombie movies really do run the gamut. You go from like, hey, it's decent, or hey, it's great, to, hey, this shouldn't have been made. I mean, yeah, you can make the argument about any movie, but I feel like, at least other movie genres, it's a bit more open with them. Oh, another good one I remember, Outpost. Outpost is wild. It's definitely one, if you've seen Dead Snow, and you enjoy that movie, I love Dead Snow. I thought that was a great movie. But if you've seen it and enjoy that, and you want... It's definitely not a comedy, but it's in that similar vein of Nazi zombies. Definitely watch Outpost, and Outpost 2. There's Outpost 3, Rise of the Spetsnaz, which... it continues on with the lore from Outpost 1 and 2, but it's honestly kind of crap. I want to say there's a fourth Outpost movie that dealt with Japan. Or I might have just somehow found that one too and watched that movie and it was completely unrelated. But the first Outpost movie, this doctor is like, look, he tells this mercenary, he's like, I want to go to this bunker, or this location. And the guy's like, okay, the area is going through civil war right now. I'll hire a bunch of guys, we'll get you there. So they get there, and it's this little beat to hell bunker. And it turns out it's from World War II. The Nazis used it. And so they find evidence of these weird experiments, and they find a room that they would kill the subjects if they didn't succeed, and they find living people in there. And I won't go into full detail in case you want to watch it, but it's a wild movie. And then the second one picks up where Outpost 1 left off. Where is the ladder to the ceiling? Or to the roof? Must be over here. But yeah, Outpost 1 and 2 are really good. Admittedly, Outpost 2's ending kinda sucks. But, you know, what can you do? It's not even that it's bad, it's written in a way that feels like it was left for a sequel. Like a proper sequel to it, and they never did anything with it. Which I've mixed feelings about. Because on one hand, you know, good. Sometimes these movies, when they get sequels, end up doing a really bad job. And because I hate that everybody's trying to do their own little cinematic universe now. That whole idea kind of feels beat to death. As few companies have tried it, Marvel's the only one that's done a halfway decent job. Also, wow, we cleared it. We cleared this place. But third movie, The Japanese one, these people try to find this bunker, and it's full of effectively zombie samurai. Well, zombie Imperial Army / a couple zombie samurai, which is pretty good. Definitely doesn't compare to Outpost 1 and 2. But it's worth watching if you're really bored and happen to be under quarantine. Wow, why is this area so snowy? You know, whatever, we'll take it. Oh my god, how much crap can I even fit in here? Okay, what do we want to take? Smeltable, ammo, gun ammo, food for sure. Refill my water, take the leather, take the iron. Ugh. Okay, we're gonna grab the meat, that's for sure. You know what, let's just grab the rest of the food, grab the meat. Organized, take all, can't take anything. Alright, let's head home. And I think we'll call this here, since don't need to see me traveling home. Oh, it's a cinnamon block. So, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit the like button. It helps out the channel a lot. If you're new, please make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.